Often we fail to recognize the effect that secrets have on our lives. They are like a quiet cancer that eats away at our souls and devours our relationships. When we enter into a contract of secrecy with someone, we give away a little piece of ourselves. If we give away too many pieces of ourselves, we end up with nothing.
I was teaching school in Boulder. I forgot something, a notebook or something I needed. And I ran home at like 10:20 in the morning because I got to the front door and my key wouldn't work, which is really, that's my own house. And so I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I rang it again and the deadbolt was locked. So finally my husband in a bathrobe comes running to the door and opens it up. And I'm like, why is the deadbolt on? And I remember him looking kind of nervous, and I just came home to get my notebook, but I don't think I ever picked the notebook up because I felt a feeling of something not right in his nervousness. And as I walked by the steps to go down to the basement, I saw the lights on down there, and I thought, what in the world? And I went downstairs, and all the lights were on. There were 2 coffee cups on the table there in front of the couch. And they're spread apart, it wasn't like they were right together. And I said, why are there 2 coffee cups here? Well, everything in me said something's not right. So I started searching. I went in the laundry room, nothing there. I just wanted to look around. I don't know what I was looking for. And I walked into the spare bedroom down there, and as I walked in, a young man ran out. He's running out as I'm running in. All I noticed was an earring in his right earlobe. Suddenly, everything started coming together. It happened suddenly, like, whoa, this is the truth. My husband was with this man, and he's a gay man, and my life is over as I knew it.
When 2 people marry and one of them is secretly gay, the whole relationship is surely going to be jeopardized. I'm Carol Griever, and I know this from personal experience. In 1991, my husband of 30 years came out to me, and our lives changed forever. There are so many who have suffered from this secrecy and deceit. I looked for help, but there weren't very many resources out there. As I rebuilt my life, I determined to try to help those other people.
My husband was having back trouble, and he couldn't walk well for 3 or 4 months. And he asked me to please get something for him out of his gym bag. And I went out to his gym bag, and there I found a package of condoms. And I go in the house, and I just show it to him with I am so angry. And I said, I don't want to talk about this. So after a couple of hours, my husband came to me and he said, I am really dying. Please, we have to talk about this. I said, okay. And he sits me down and he says, he was a very nice older gentleman and he was married.
Both men and women experience similar distress after discovering that their mates are gay.
She said that she didn't know what to really make of it and what she was going to do, but that, ultimately she told me that she was going to be lovers with her to see what that was all about. We had a period of trying to work it out, but it was also a period of great darkness, as I recall it, of being jealous all the time, because she said she wouldn't be lovers with her friend, but she was still going to be friends with her. And of course, every time she went out, it felt like I was being betrayed again. So it was a pretty dark period until it finally fell apart. And when she said she was planning on going to the West Coast, I said, well, you can't take the kids. And she said, I don't want to take the kids. And that's when I realized I was bound to be a single dad. It's betrayal in that classic sense of adultery. And then to have it doubled in some ways by being something that you don't understand and you can't fight and you can't in any way change. There was no way for me to react, but with just, unbelievable sadness and frustration and inability to do anything to change the course of events.
Once we know the truth, we wonder how we missed it for so long.
I felt like a freak because, first of all, I guess I should have known. I should have seen more of the clues that were dropped along the way. And I just felt like I had been duped and deceived into something that wasn't real. It just seemed really odd that you could be with someone that long and they could turn out to be someone totally different than who you thought you were going to be with. There is a level of secrecy between when you find out and when you decide to leave the relationship. And you don't know who to talk to, who to trust, who might turn their back on you if they find out your situation.
Sharing the closet of secrecy is horrible for most of us. For your own well-being, it is essential to find someone you trust to confide in, a counselor, a friend, or a relative. Lots of people join straight spouse groups for support.
The basis of the Straight Spouse Network is personal, confidential support. The group is very much like a self-help group. It's peer-run. There's no gay bashing allowed. There's no telling people what to do. So it's a way for spouses to share their stories, ask questions for other people's input. And it's quite amazing to see people helping each other with insights that you wouldn't think that they would have when they first came in.
But people said, you had such a perfect marriage. What did you do? So it was that sense which it was my fault.
I remember when my daughter told me that, "Mommy, you broke up our family." And I just couldn't believe I was hearing it. And at that time, I think she was 3 or 4 years old. So it's not anything she could have made up. And I was just so angry, and I couldn't figure out what to do with it. So the next day, I dressed in black, and I went out in the backyard, and I dug a really deep hole, and I took off my wedding ring, and I put it in the hole, and I buried it.
But for me, the reality is I still haven't gotten over this. And I had this picture that we'd be growing old together. I really wanted to have for my son an Ozzie and Harriet kind of family life where he was going to grow up with an intact family. I don't dwell on it all the time, but the hurt never entirely has gone away.
I think for me, the hardest thing is that life is so hard. I'm a single mom, I'm the major breadwinner, I have major custody of my daughter. Hopefully there will be someone who comes into my life. Hopefully I'm not so resentful that I'm turning them away. But there are times when I think, he made it out of this and he built a really nice life. And I'm trying to build a nice life, but I'm building it pretty much by myself.
And it's hard.
Support in general for living is something everybody needs. It's hard to go it alone.
Yeah.
Professional counseling may be an alternative to support groups.
Sue and I were going through marital counseling at the time this whole thing came out, and so I did have a therapist that I was able to go see. And actually that was very helpful. There are points where you really start doubting yourself, and it's really nice to have somebody just come along and say, no, this is not your fault.
Encouragement through counseling or support groups helps gay straight couples meet another major challenge, telling the family.
I drove down from Oakland, and it's about a 10-hour drive, and I got there at dinner time, and so he was piddling around in the kitchen fixing dinner. Then he said, I had something I wanted to ask you, and I said, okay, well, what's that? He said, are you gay? So I guess that was his way of entering into the conversation. So, and I said, well, no, but I can see why you might think that because I haven't had a girlfriend in a few years. And he said, okay, well, I am. I didn't fall over backwards surprised, but as I say, I'd never thought to myself, gee, I think my dad's gay. It was more like a reminder that as well as you think you know somebody, you may not, there may be things about them you don't know. I think my next reaction was, well, I'm sorry for Mom. And probably my next reaction was well, I'm sorry for you because you've had to cover it up for all this time. But it seemed to me at the time that I was old enough that it didn't really have any effect on me. I had already been fledged into the world, and it was sort of a lateral matter between them as opposed to a vertical matter, a father-son thing.
I also recall telling my son when he was age 4, things were going to happen that he was going to wonder about, such as me moving into a different bedroom in the house. And so he needed to be explained something. And so I talked to him about how his mother was gay and she was there. We were together, but I did most of the talking, and what that meant, and that it was totally natural thing. While most men like and love women and get married to them, sometimes men like other men and sometimes women like other women. And a few weeks later, when we were driving in the car, I thought I'd quiz him a little bit and see what he took away from that talk. And he said, well, Mommy likes women and you like men. And there was this symmetry at his level of cognitive development. And I said, no, Mommy likes women and Daddy likes women too. I think it took him a little while.
Straight spouses are also threatened by possible exposure to AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases. Now, AIDS test results are immediate. But a few years ago, the process took weeks, and people agonized while they waited.
My lowest point was after 14 years of being with my husband. After all those years of being faithful, I had to go get an AIDS test. And that made me furious because he is the one who had been unfaithful and I was the one who was put at risk. I could have died from his behavior. The day I went in for the test was a very long day for me, and I was so angry I couldn't even cry about it.
Usually, this deep rage passes, but long-term emotional damage is another real danger.
I'm not the vibrant personality. I'm not the fun-loving, I got to get that back. And so I tried, and it was very difficult because all these years, 18 years, I thought there's something terribly wrong with me. My self-esteem through the floor.
My work was important to me, but I saw my role as a husband and as a father to be more important than my work. So when I was no longer a husband, I lost that piece of my own identity. Gradually, my world sort of tended to narrow into coming home from work and laying back on the couch and watching TV or reading and becoming more sedentary, not getting out as much, not eating well, putting on weight. And because I put on weight, I didn't feel as good about myself as far as my attractiveness in the dating scenes. During the warm weather months, I sit out front and talk to people walking by, get to know some of the neighbors. I'd say in general, I still tend to isolate too much.
Depression, grief, and loss of self-esteem are common. But for most, a definite turning point occurs, some epiphany that points us toward recovery.
I got in a big mix-up trying to keep my job by doing drugs and losing my job because I finally, after 4 or 5 years of trying to keep up a life like that, I had my brother go into work and tell him I wouldn't be back. And I put myself into a place in Denver. I went down there, and 30 days I came out and I said, never again. So it took a lot of support and help to get me out of the depths,
I was with a couple that I know, and we were talking about the breakup of my marriage and my husband being gay, and I talked about how maybe it was me and I was not good enough or strong enough or whatever it was, sexy enough. And my friend's husband said, well, maybe you're just looking at that backwards. Maybe you should look at the fact that you're a hell of a woman for keeping him straight as long as you did. And I was real encouraged by that. I read a lot around that time about narcissism, about the Peter Pan syndrome, and I really did see myself as Wendy, as the one who took care of Peter Pan when Tinkerbell was the one who got all the perks. And it's not a role you want to be in for a long time. It's really hard on your ego. It's real hard on your self-esteem. I thought that if I was better, if I had sex more often with him, whatever it is, that maybe it would make a difference. And if I had known then what I know now, I would have known how futile that was. He was moving in a direction like a moving train that I couldn't stop. And the best thing I could do was to get off the tracks.
I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, and I just completed my first book. And I had the idea that maybe I could take the kids on a trip around the world and possibly write a book about that. But more important to me was that I wanted to forge a family of 3 out of the ashes of our family of 4. I wanted to use adventure as our crucible, but it was mostly a time for the 3 of us to lick our collective wounds. The fact that I'm not afraid to lead a life that's a little bit out of the ordinary and take some chances has really stood all of us in pretty good stead.
I think the advice that I would give to someone who believes they're a straight spouse going through this is just to realize that you are not alone. There are resources and people out there, and just seek them out wherever you can, either through friends or through the clergy, individual counseling, the Straight Spouse Support Network. Whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and to keep yourself afloat through this is really good. I actually made a tape during that time of some music that I liked a lot. It's sort of on one side it was all the Done Me Wrong songs, and on the other side was all the I'm gonna be fine, I'm gonna make it songs. And I would just put that on for myself as I was driving around, and I just found it really helped me a lot to have that. And now when I play the songs, I just sort of laugh because I realize how silly some of them are now, but boy, at the time, they were great. When you're involved with a gay man, you really are trying to dig out weeds you didn't plant. It's a part of him that he has not taken care of, that he hasn't come face to face with. And until he does, he can't make a relationship work with anyone. And nothing you can do can change that.
While every story is unique, one stands out as the most unusual. This family is a stunning example of the healing power of love.
I think I repressed for all of those years because I didn't want to be gay. I acknowledged inside that I had these feelings about men, being attracted to men, but I didn't want to be attracted to men. And I thought if I married the most beautiful woman in my college and created the most incredible marriage, got involved sexually as well as emotionally with this person, all I needed to do was to have this, and these feelings of being gay would go away. And I really didn't want to be gay, and so I hung in there for as long as I could.
Finally I said, something is not right. We are so compatible. We have no financial worries. We don't have arguments. Everything is so good, except when we go to bed.
And when Gwen was feeling maybe inadequate or guilty for maybe something that she was not doing to make our sex life one of these instead of just one of these, that's what was the conversation that we had that brought about the voice in my head that said, tell her, tell her, tell her she needs to know.
And then Sam got an opportunity to go to Saudi Arabia to work, and we thought, well, maybe if we travel, we get away from family concerns or whatever, everything will be fine. Finally, when we got over to Saudi Arabia, I sat down with him one day and I said, Sam, what is wrong? Are you gay? And he said, no, I just don't think I love you anymore. Here I am halfway around the world and my husband is telling me he doesn't love me anymore. And he said, I think we need to go back home. So we did. Sam moved out, but he still hadn't said anything about being gay. And then one evening, after we had separated, he came home to visit, to see his son, and to visit with me. We were still friendly. And he broke down in tears, and he told me, yes, I'm gay. And I hear people having an out-of-body experience. I don't know that I really had one, but I can still see myself in a fetal position and I am screaming. I think that was my lowest, when I realized how upside down my life had become.
I told Gwen I didn't love her because I couldn't say, Gwen, I'm gay. And I learned through that experience that no matter what you feel the repercussion may be, it's always best to be open and honest with the truth.
Were we going to try to stay together? Were we going to divorce? What were we going to do? And we laid awake in bed one night and just said, I think what we really need to do is let each other go with love and still be friends, be as close as we've always been, but we need to be true to who we are. So we both said, yes, a divorce is what we're going to have to do. But the next morning was a beautiful sunny morning, and we got on our bikes, and we were going to go for a ride, and my heart was breaking, but there was also a sense of relief. Well, I think for Sam, the relief was indescribable. And as we rode down this dirt road on our bikes, I was behind Sam, and I could see him as if this load had been taken off his shoulders, and he was like a little boy who had just learned to ride a bike. And he was grinning from ear to ear, and I was happy for him, even though I knew what was ahead of us was going to be very, very tough. But he told me later that that was a moment of bliss, that he could finally be who he was.
After Gwen's amicable divorce from Sam, he soon introduced her to Chuck, his good friend from work.
Sam had said to me, why don't you call my ex-wife and ask her out? I said, that's strange. That's a little weird. I don't know if I want to go there. But at any rate, we met downtown here, had a glass of wine and talked opera. And I was definitely interested in her. And I said, well, I'd like to see you again. Maybe you could come over and have dinner. And I think 4 months later, we got married. So it was one of those long engagements. When we got married, you said, here's what I got. I got Greg, I got Sam, I got Sam's parents, and your family.
And my family. And I come as a package.
Yeah. I almost feel like Sam is more like family now, whereas before he was just purely a friend. Most people divorce wind up hating each other, and it's easy. You can just hate. But when you love somebody, but you still have to separate, it's harder, I think, because all that feeling is still there. And yet today, Sam and Gwen can still care for each other, and it's not a problem. It's not a problem for me. It's not a problem for them. I think the way we both feel about Gwen is a bond between us also. It's been great, our marriage, for almost 19 years now. Sam once told me, the thing about Gwen is the longer you know her, the better she gets. And I thought, well, there's some PR or something. But you know what? It's true. She's just a wonderful, caring person.
I would do anything for her, anytime, anywhere. I will be there. And you know what? I know the same goes the other direction. And so it's that feeling of always being involved. Connected, yeah, I like that.
And when we wrote our own divorce agreement and child custody agreement, it was looking out for each other. You know, they talk about unconditional love. Here it is. It's real in practice.
Not all endings are so happy, but it's clear that when this crisis hits, we can survive it and reconfigure our lives in a positive way.
I was your basic happily married man, and I really did think I had made it for life. But when I came to terms with the fact that that wasn't the way it was going to continue, I rebuilt a life as a full-time single father, and that brought me immeasurable joy and these fabulous adventures. It feels to me that grief and loss are the glue that binds humanity together. It's the one thing that's universal, and it's how you deal with that kind of tragedy or loss that really determines what kind of person you are. And for me and for my kids, I think we've come out on the other side of this loss, wounded for sure, but not scarred to a point where we're disfigured. I think we're stronger, fuller human beings for what we've lived through.
Repressed sexuality is really nasty. It has all sorts of horrible side effects. And anybody who gets into a marriage, a heterosexual marriage, and then someplace in the middle comes out as gay, is dealing with repressed sexuality issues in one form or another. And they're dealing with a lot of stuff. Cultivate compassion. It's not about you.
When the secrets are out and we live our truth, we can reconstruct authentic lives, alone, as single parents, or with new mates. With time and patience, we can grow beyond anger and into acceptance, wiser and stronger for the experience.